reflection upon the lake. You see the sky above. They're saying that as above, so below, and as within, so without. That we can all things reflect all things. The reflection there is just the surface, like a mirror. It's just an appearance. It doesn't always show what's within, just as you're seeing the sky and the beauty above on the surface of the lake. You may not be able to see on camera, but around the edge of this waterway here, since I've been here, not as much right now, but there's been a lot of ugliness around the perimeter. So from possible stagnation, pollution and so forth. I imagine that might be harm that we've created in the earth. I did notice that there was a film of petrol from a boat here a few days ago. So that's one example of what I'm talking about. You're about to see there's a beautiful black swan up in the background. You might be able to see on the screen. I can't tell. I'm not seeing the screen at the moment, but there's definitely, oh my goodness, a family of, I think they're ducks that are coming on screen. If they're not already, I think they're nearly on screen. They're coming in from the left, I'll go to the right. It's so beautiful. So in terms of what's beneath, and what's below the surface, I have some healing to do that's deep, and I know there's a judgment there of some sort that I have accepted, I've adopted and embraced since childhood. I don't know what that is yet, but I know it's there. I imagine you'd see that family of birds. I'm pretty sure they're ducks. And you might, there's another black swan that just flapped its wings over. I think you might see that on the screen, behind where the ducks. And as much as there's sadness involved for anyone who faces their wound, their pain, and begins to see themselves, who they really were, the child that deserved to be heard and nurtured and held, rather than who we may have thought we were, a bad person. The lovely Gabor Mate, who I had the privilege of spending 2 hours of my life earlier this year on Zoom with him in an Instagram meeting with him and many other people. I actually bought his masterclass after that live recording. He's a beautiful man, a great healer. And for those who don't know of him, he's a trauma specialist. That's what he's known for. interestingly enough, on a somewhat unexpected, unrelated note, because I've just forgotten where I was going with that story. I've been known my whole life for saying the word, is it not but, what's the, but I'm doing it now, it's a, I do that a lot, right, there you go. And that was pointed out to me by a man in the church I went to like decades ago, and not somebody I admire or appreciate or respect in terms of his characteristics and qualities. Didn't help pointing that out. Made me feel worse actually. So why I do this, why I say a lot, is because there's so much repressed stuff inside me that I was not able to get out, that no one helped me, almost nobody helped me heal. I held everything in to survive. Been a long time. It feels like I don't deserve anything more, anything better than what I've had. That's that's what I was going to say about Gabor Mate. Yeah, but to finish what I was saying, and I'll get back to where I was going. I don't feel I deserve anything more or better than what I've had, because of the judgment I have of being not good enough, being that there's something wrong with me, being a bad person or a bad boy. Even if those words weren't actually spoken, that message was delivered whatever way it was. There's endless ways to communicate, and they're not always obvious and noticed or picked up, but they're there. Gabor Mate, during that meeting on Instagram, pointed out that children, if we experience trauma, particularly like trauma of like relationship trauma from abuse, as we call it, not accidental things, but intentional or deliberate abuse. That's my definition of narcissism. He actually owned his own irresponsibly and called it narcissism in that video. I thought that's interesting. And a lady I spoke with last week on a therapeutic phone line, she had the same view of me, is that those things are just accidents, they're mistakes, they're learning opportunities when we accidentally hurt each other. Narcissism is about the intent, so I thought, yeah, no, that's what I thought, so that was nice. But I think, my view on that is that people just, whatever irresponsible behaviour I was talking about was just, unintentional, but, um, 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 yeah, I just need a sip of my tea. So during that 2 hour Zoom meeting with Gabor, he said how when we experience trauma in childhood, and it's more to do with what, rather than what was said or communicated, however that was done to us, it's actually an insight I gained last year, is that it's actually more to do with how we interpret that, because it's not what happens outside of us, it's what we make of it. And usually in childhood, when we don't have any conscious choice to realise that it's not about us, it's actually the horrible people around us. If and when that's the reality of it. And sadly, that's in that context, that's how it needs to be. And what I mean by that is what Gabor pointed out, is that as children, we're hardwired, we're pre-programmed to internalize the abuse, to make it about us, that we're somehow to blame or at fault. I thought that was just because in childhood, life is meant to be all about us. We're meant to be in a wonderful, beautiful way, right? I thought that's a natural, healthy part of human development, and I still believe that. I think what Gabor shared sort of adds to that is that, and it was really profound for me, but what he was saying is that in childhood, when we experience trauma, we internalize that, so we make it somehow about us. So, our fault, we're responsible for what was happening. And what he said, what really fascinated me, is that if we blamed, identified the real source, like we can do as adults, which might be the environment or the people around us. If we do that as children, we won't survive. We will die. So that's what that is. It's sad. It's there's different ways of looking at that. And I don't fully understand it. I don't think any of us fully understand anything, but it does make sense. So here I am, still with just identifying a lot of unhealed, unresolved trauma that and the judgment that I've just shared that I have of myself, that I'm somehow a bad person, a bad boy, there's something wrong with me. That I've had all my whole life that I've not been able to speak about. And I've had to hold all of that in, and a whole lot more, in silence to survive. And I was, to use a metaphor I used in one of my books, when those that push you in the mud will point and laugh at you for being dirty, and that's what happens. When people don't have their needs met and can't have them met how they deserve to, for anyone in any situation. There's ancient wisdom in the book of Proverbs that speaks about this, and there'd be, truth, reality is universal, so there'd be sources all around the world from our shared history that would reflect these things, but in different sacred texts and whatever form of knowledge that they might be. When we can't have our needs met how we deserve to have them met, and this might be particularly resonant. I'm going to make this about childhood because that's what I'm talking about here, and you can probably see the beautiful birds flying, a pair of them, just beautiful birds flying across. They're lovely. When we can't have what we deserve and get our needs met, we'll turn to whatever is second best or die. I know I'm really blunt and direct there. I don't mean to be disrespectful or insensitive. I'll just give that a moment to sink in. This applies to any part of our lives. I've seen this reflected in many, many different ways throughout my lifetime. So when we can't have our needs met, we all turn to whatever's the second best thing that'll get us through, right? And those crutches that we use, we call them addictions or whatever, they're actually us loving ourselves in the way that we can and know how to. So I've always wanted to help people, and particularly in relation to healing. And the basis for any qualification, any authentic authority, is achievement in our own life, right? With or without what we call official accreditation or documentation or certification, any of that stuff that may be relevant. But what's important is that we know what we're talking about. So, hang on, just have a sip of my tea. I just need to breathe for a second. So it's either survive or don't. Whatever situation we're in. I've endured. I knew over a decade ago that most people that jeered and mocked at me for how I showed up, how I presented, I kept it within the knowledge that people that behave like that wouldn't survive a month of what I endured every day, my whole life. I'm 49, probably about, I think, 4 months off turning 50. Quite remarkable for me to know that I don't feel what I think of that means. What that growing up with what I thought that would feel like, if you know what I mean. But I think there's a lot of people that would relate with our perceptions of things, and when But just watching it, beautiful. It was a cockatoo, but actually it might be it's a raven. It's a raven. So nature here can be one of the great healers. To connect with nature, I certainly need a lot of that, and can't go without that. I've spent most of my time alone in nature this year. Transversed this continent from east to west and back. Quite an epic journey. So here I am, needing to purge a lot of what I've held within, what I've held back. And I judged myself as a small child. There are reasons why I believe what I experienced, the abuse, was started in utero. There are stories there I won't go into now. What I'm certain of, and based on things my mother shared, a certain response when I asked 3 times in the last 10 years or so about how I felt unloved. She had a very precise response. It was a script, that the wording was the same every time I asked her over that however many year period it was. I finally had enough, I guess, courage or whatever it was that enabled me to ask her to mention that subject. I didn't want to offend her or to feel uncomfortable, so I never went any further with that discussion. But her response was always very angry and narky. I loved you when I always loved you when you were 3. And it's like, oh, so that was a script you had in your head prepared for when, if the time came, that I would ask you about this. So it always, I always loved you, blah blah blah. When you were 3, so something obviously happened when I was 3. So I'm quite certain that what there's a term now that people use, parentified. It's when parents give their children adult responsibilities, which is how I was treated. It was my mother's way of trying to help herself to medicate. Just people use the term, medicate when people smoke weed or whatever, or drink excessively or whatever to numb their pain. That's what it is. So it's obviously not effective. None of those things are ultimately the solution, right? And that's why always had, felt like I've had the weight of the world on my shoulders, and never knew why. That was a big part of it. When I knew that, just before I saw my mother the last time, not that long ago, mid this year actually, probably about a month before that, I was travelling through Traralgon, the town where she lives, the town where I was born, on my way from Melbourne to near here, to a beach area where I was camping, and it was either morning or night. It was dark, and as I was driving through Traralgon, I knew intuitively that there was something at the place where I grew up. I won't mention that address. And I drove there and had a look, and I've got video of this on one of my phones, and I looked at the note, the number plate, the license plate on the car in the driveway, and it was BAD 79, and I don't know what the last digit or number was, or letter. Nor would I say, because that would be, I imagine that would be a breach. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I was born in 76, like BAD, bad. Like, I thought, oh, yeah, kind of relate. And it wasn't until, and I thought, but 79, like that was the 79 something, and I thought 79. I was born in 76, and I thought, oh, I don't know. Anyway, so I drove on and went to the beach and set up my tent, and I think it was like 2 days later. I thought, oh, hang on, that number plate. I was 3 in the year 1979. I turned 3, bad 79. I was 3 in that year, and I thought, oh, yeah, okay. When I actually reconnected with my mother, and she tried to pull the wool over my eyes the first day, and I was so happy that I finally learnt she'd finally learnt the lessons and come. We didn't actually discuss anything. It was all smoke and mirrors, an act that she was very skilled at that, until her true self was revealed the next day, and she didn't realise I'd learnt my lessons by then, but she's found out. There's so much emotion here. The first day when I was there, like I arrived there very early in the morning. I'd stayed in my car overnight in the bush nearby, and was driving through like 5 in the morning or something. And on my way, I was going to go to the other side of Melbourne, and 'cause I'm living nomadically. I'm experiencing homelessness this year, so I'm living nomadically in my car / camping. And I was going to go to Melbourne, or the other side of Melbourne, way over the other side of Melbourne, where a beautiful nature reserve where I stayed at the time, and frequently, and I just felt intuitively that morning, just as I was approaching Traralgon, to drop in at my mother's. I thought, what? And I knew she was often up early, and I drove past, and the lights were on. I thought, okay, we'll see what happens, because the last time I was there, actually on Mother's Day, ironically, earlier this year, when she was not happy to see me at all. Oh my goodness. Ew. Anyway, lo and behold, I knocked on the door, and she was delighted to see me, and I was like, wow. And we got really drunk, and I bought her some beers, and we got really drunk, and I was so happy that she was finally happy and learned her lessons. And as I said, that was just an act. But and during that first 24 hours, she mentioned that because I mentioned that I was obviously, she would have known me experiencing homelessness, and I mentioned that, and she, for whatever reason, suggested that I can stay at her house for 3 weeks, right, while she goes up to my sister's in Queensland. And that was like, I think, 2 days later or 3 days later. So the next morning so I was delighted. I thought, my goodness, wow, like, a shower, a hot shower, like any shower, right? And shelter, and like, wow. And as I've shared, the next day I realised what the situation was. It was just an act, and so I guess she fell into the trap she set for me. But while I was there, that was where I got a reading from a former acquaintance of mine, and used the word parentified, and that's where I began to really get greater clarity on what was happening, what my mother did. And it actually mentioned some of the readings while I was actually at my mother's were about the abuse that she did to me. The people that sent them, probably they didn't know me, and that's how our intuition can work. Yeah, a lot of what she did and how she did it. I received a lot of readings from different sources on my social media feed that very accurately depicted what she did and how cleverly disguised it was. It was, yeah. I think there was a specific reading that I was wanting to get to, in why I brought up staying at my mother's, and I've forgotten what that was. If there was a particular reading, I'll just take a break because I need a breath. Actually, on that subject, when people have a lot of repressed, unresolved trauma, it's very common, I'm finding out, to be so focused or on so focused on something like what you're doing or talking about that you forget to even breathe, and because you're so disconnected, you've disassociated or disconnected from those parts of ourselves, so we survive. To actually just briefly get back onto this, when I was over on the other side of the continent, an hour north of Albany in Western Australia, a campsite there, lovely, lovely place. The first time I got there, something come up on my Instagram feed, because this is like every day, all day, like things come to me from all different sources, mediums, psychics, like all kinds of guides, whatever we call them, whatever I need right at the moment. Sometimes these unfold in real life as I watch them. It's remarkable. That's been a relatively recent thing for me. But this particular Instagram post or reel said that for people who have trauma that live in their heads, and some of you will relate with this if you've lived this or know about this, we do that because we can't live in our bodies. We can't connect because of the trauma. And I thought, oh, that why my mind races. I can never ever relax. Never could stop. I began to start that process. I began that process mid last year when I was finally free of my family. The environment that I was that poisoned me. That was like a really wonderful, unexpected blessing when that began to happen. I was out bushwalking at the time, but to get on with this story, I could never stop. My mind was constantly active. I didn't know how to help myself or what to do or if I could. So when this Instagram post came on that people who carry trauma in our bodies, where it's too much for us to deal with, for us to process. And I've done pretty much, for the most part, all this healing on my own this year without any support. In fact, quite an immense amount of betrayal, both from professionals and, I mean, not that that necessarily means anything, but an immense amount of betrayal in the last 18 months. An immense, almost everyone I've known, not everyone. There's some amazing, beautiful people that I've had such a unspeakable privilege and joy to have known. Actually, there was one person who was, I did meet in a professional context, who was just I feel silly when I think about, when I hear myself reflect on this, saying that at my age, it was the best time of my life, meeting that person. But it's true. I just shared a great connection with him. So when I was in Albany and this message came up about the disconnection. It was actually the next day in that campsite over in Western Australia where I started to experience sensation in my body. I didn't even know that I had disconnected. And wow, I couldn't adequately describe with word what I experienced, like over the next couple of weeks or so. It would sound, it would sound not real. But yeah, like when I began to I guess, not enter my body, but to connect with my body, and it wasn't that I didn't have any sensations at all. It wasn't that, but there was so much of my body I didn't experience and feel, and I didn't feel safe being in in my body. Most of that, certainly most of that process has been completed now. It's been incredible. It just to touch my foot, my leg, to feel like the nice feeling it is just to feel like, to feel that, it's like I never had that and didn't know I was missing it. Um, oh, um, so I'm happy here now, to know that, because healing is always a wonderful thing, not because it's fun or nice, or it's none of those things. It's because of what it leads to, and not just what it actually, just not just what it can lead to for us. I think it's the basis of it. But once we achieve that, I think I said that at the start of this video. So once we achieve that success, we can therefore have something to offer, some value to offer others that may need it. It's just all part and parcel of the beautiful world that we can create. Um, I never got actually the just to say what I was about to say. I'll reference the reading from my former acquaintance, a psychic woman in America, whose reading mentioned the word parentified when I lived at my mother's, actually, a few months, mid this year, when she was up in Queensland. And I knew that was the main wound that I needed to heal from, that prevented me from succeeding in business and relationships. She used zodiac and astrology as part of that, which I'm not familiar with. I don't know a lot about that, but when I researched what she was talking about in terms of what they call the earth energy, or earth sign, or earth energy, I think it was. But it made sense. And this is actually the campsite I came to when I left my mother's to begin that healing process. And here I am, unintentionally, sometime quite a couple of months or 3 months, whatever it is later, back here, um, doing that much on a much deeper level. Um, um, what was I going to say? Yeah, that reading. She in that reading, that clairvoyant said that, and she didn't know it was for me. She'd actually, I'd let her know previously, a little while prior to that, she actually wasn't the person I thought she was, and not to call me friend when she clearly, her behaviour showed that she wasn't. I've since reached out to her and, let her know that I have no issues with that, and we're actually on the same side, and she hasn't responded, so I've just let that go. That's fine. Anyway, so in that reading where she mentioned, the being parentified, and and the a lot of what happened, and from my mother, I was actually, as I said, living at my mother's house on my own for 3 weeks. That she'd let me have for free. It's quite remarkable. In that reading, she mentioned that, and that whoever that reading was for, that I'd been, what did she say, like embodying or personifying the inner child archetype, or or energy. And I was aware over the last like 2 or 3 months that I was doing that, the way I like play in nature. Like I'm like, as I said, 49, and I'd been aware of that, thinking, what on earth, Scott? And what's this about? Is this? And I didn't know, but the answer was revealed in that reading. She said it was because I never got to be a child, that it was my way of giving that to myself now. It's like, oh, okay. And part of that reading was saying, by healing the wound, that's going to help me grow up a bit more. And I thought, oh, that's what that's about. That actually makes sense. I was very aware and conscious of how I would have been perceived, like any of us would be when we're, when we're being different, or just being us. It's perceived as a different. Well, it is a different. It's okay. So there you go. There you go. That's what that was. I was letting myself be the child that I never got to be, and I needed to be. Thank you. They know. You were never meant to grieve alone. We all know. Just weren't ready. It's begun, this healing process that needs to happen to make what this world can be, what it's going to be, what it has always needed to be. That process has begun. Always. There was something wrong with me. That's why I wasn't loved. That's why I could never be me. I was so sure I did something to deserve that. And I've never stopped looking for what that reason was. Every time I come into contact with anyone, I'm afraid of that reason showing up in whatever unthinkable way I could imagine it might be. And so many people took advantage of that in all the wrong ways that people should never do. It didn't help them. That held them back from what they deserve, from what they need. This process that many people are experiencing all around the earth of purging and cleansing and healing and working through their trauma, and that won't stop. That won't stop. It can't be stopped. I'm a leader within that movement. I've known that for quite some time. A lot of the clairvoyants and various mediums and whatever word we use, we're all one and the same thing. However we classify and categorize. But a lot of them have said that I was a leader, and one that not just taught, but I demonstrated. Right? That's actually what leadership is. That's a demonstration. We think of leadership as bossing people and having power over people. That's not leadership. That's abuse. Leadership is showing people how they can help themselves, because that's what helping's about. It's not doing things for people that they need to do for themselves. So leadership is demonstrating that, not being living that, without realising that that was just me being me. Sometimes it was a beautiful woman I spoke with. She was lovely. I'd forgotten her name. At a place in Geraldton over in Western Australia, and she was collecting cans and bottles to make a couple of bucks to recycle them to help her husband, who had severe chronic mental health issues. Really poor mental health is a better way to say it. And I thought, this wonderful human being who was kind enough to speak with me and be real, one of the few people there that did, and this woman would have been viewed as by most of the other horrible, arrogant people as a low life, I guess. Probably not so much morally, but for being, not for any reason, but because of the other people's ugly arrogance. But because this woman was beautiful, and I'd forgotten her name, but yet to be, she was like walking around parks collecting recyclables to make a couple of bucks to help her husband. I mean, how beautiful, how beautiful. Was she? I'm grieved that I don't recall her name. She did tell me. She mentioned how when she told me, sometimes when she's alone she cries. And I just said, because I'd done this actually at that place, I think, in the days prior. I said, me too. Sometimes I do it just when people are around, and I don't know if you on camera. If you, I don't even know if the camera's still going. Oh yeah, it is. The beautiful birds that just flew out over and went over to the left here off screen. Beautiful. But yeah, it was like I was very aware that it wasn't just that I chose to grieve and to cry in public. There weren't many people around. There would have been a few people if they saw that it wasn't important. But I chose it deliberately. I probably could have gone in my car if I wanted to, a degree of privacy. But I actually chose to. I thought there were many experiences that were often seem as shaming, or I certainly experienced that shame of that I didn't deserve. And I happily embraced knowing that there's so many other people that would experience that, being homeless or experiencing homelessness, and there's a difference between experiencing homelessness and saying, being homeless, because being is about who we are. That's about our identity, and that's not who we are. Homelessness is an experience that is brought about by believing that we don't belong. That's what home is, that we belong. And if we believe, like the lie that many people are taught in childhood through being abused, that there's something wrong with you, you're not quite right, you don't belong, you're not meant to be. Like any belief, that seed will grow up, and when it grows up into maturity and bears its fruit, the fruit of its kind, the fruit of that, the fruit of that seed is the experience of homelessness. Right? I'll let that sink in. So that's what our lives are made of. Our inner world are gardens full of seeds and all kinds of plants that grow. Both, to use the Christian example, thorns and thistles, or plums and pineapples, or whatever. I mean, that's not what Christ said, but that thorn, the thorns and thistles or fruit. So we can get to work in our garden to create paradise, and which will be reflected in our outside world progressively as we put in the work. I experienced many things, fully aware of how I was presenting. Like, there was one point, like over in Geraldton, actually, my shirt, a particular shirt, for those who know the clothing brand company, Scotch and Soda, I like a lot of their stuff. And there was one of their shirts I had, and because I was using laundromat services while living in my car and travelling, I didn't have a good quality washer, and that particular T-shirt had stains that hadn't fully come out from the laundromat that I used, and I had this particular T-shirt on at the park near the beach there that I was showering at, and this particular morning when I had this shirt on, I don't know if it was, no, it wouldn't have been ice cream, I don't know coffee or I don't know what it was, but I'd spilt something on this already stained shirt, and it just looked like, to use what's the guy's name? Ben Stiller, a beautiful guy. I don't know him personally, but I really like his work, and him and Owen. That he's I think they're friends. But yeah, I'm talking about actually I think they're both in this film. I think the Blue Steel. What's it called? What's that called? I know a lot of people know the film I'm talking about from a long time ago. What's it called? Blue Steel's like it's like it's a parody of I guess the silliness of the fashion industry, I think. and all that sort of pretentious stuff. It was a funny film, but oh, what's the film called? I can't think of it. But anyway, there's a line in there. Part of the parody is that I think it was a send up that I don't know if it was. I don't think it was Ben Stiller's character. I think it was the fashion guy, and played by the wonderful, and I forget your name, Mister. But you I think you play Ron Burgundy. And I've forgotten your name at the moment, but you're a wonderful human being who's an American actor who does a lot of specialises mostly in comedy, and I've forgotten your name. But I'm pretty sure it was your character who does the derelict range of fashion, right? And it's all like a parody of people wearing garbage bags, people looking like what we call homeless people, right? As I said, homelessness is an experience; it's not an identity. So it's not actually that there are homeless people. We need to realise that and stop perpetuating the lie that stop perpetuating the lie that creates that experience of homelessness. So there actually aren't any homeless people. There's just some of us who experience that circumstance. So yeah, so so there I thought of that over in the other side of this country earlier this year when I was in Geraldton, and I was looking quite derelict, derelict, right? I looked very, very shabby, and I actually felt somewhat proud in many senses. Actually, the acquaintance I mentioned earlier, the revolutionary psychic person over in America whose reading I received at my mother's and had been an acquaintance of mine earlier this year, she was quite an important person in my life at the time, and I think played an incredibly important role. But that morning, she was something because of what was happening politically in America, and I imagine still, I'm certain it would be, but I was quite I thought I was going to be a very big player in terms of remedying what was happening over there, and it didn't end up being what I thought it was going to be in terms of my role. But yeah, what was happening over there? People from a report, she said, that the because of the political bullshit, they were rounding up people with, I think, was it that were experiencing homelessness or mental health issues and putting them in prisons. So I believe that was something to that effect, and so in terms of like experiencing the shame that I didn't deserve, and by in all kinds of ways, I actually felt proud in a way, in an unexpected way that I never thought I would be in that position. But I would much rather have had the dignity that we all deserve. I've always wanted that. There were so many ways I showed up that would have been seen as like some horrible person, and nobody took the time to, or almost nobody took the time to ask me how I was. They just made assumptions based on how my presentation about who I was and what I was up to, and none of that was accurate. That was all their own projection. That was a reflection of themselves. Those things. I was actually the person I mentioned before, who I had the privilege of spending time with and getting to know a little bit. I was like, I had an amazing connection with him. He was just a fun person and great memories. I'd never experienced friendship like that before. He didn't see me. I didn't realise how, yeah, when I shared actually some of what I'm talking about now, about how I presented and how I soldiered through that, knowing I didn't have the opportunity to tell anyone, where that was coming from, and nor would have most people listened if I did. But when I mentioned that, when I got back to Victoria, and I mentioned a little bit of that. I remember him saying something that just the way he said it and his body language when he dropped his, he said that must have been tough, something to that effect, a little bit more than that. Whatever he said, I just he must have been thinking about that, over the course of the few months or whatever it was. We've been chatting online within his the scope of his profession as a therapist, and just the way he's he knew a bit of my story and what I was experiencing at the time, and just the way he said that shows he's reflected on what I'd been going through, and that he'd thought of that not just in an intellectual way, but in a the empathy he showed there, that he'd really considered what I'd experienced. Just a few short words said so much. I didn't really realise it until after I reflected on on that. I mean, he didn't let out any emotion. It was just, but didn't need to. It was just that acknowledgement of like, oh, he's actually sees what happened. I hear either a boat arriving somewhere, or it's an engine of some sort, or it might be a car coming to the campsite. That's my cue to wrap this video up. Thank you for listening. Mate, and the therapist I was referred to. Thanks, mate. You're a good friend. I know that. Some people are angels. I just listened to the birds behind me. You could probably hear. I knew this was going to be a long form piece of content. I'm gonna see how long it goes for. I've never done a. Yeah, I was gonna say an hour. It's wow. It's 59 minutes. I'm pretty sure that says 59 minutes and 21 seconds. There you go. That may be relevant to an algorithm. Who knows? Whatever reason, I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna go. I don't know what if that would work or what that would be. I'm just gonna trust the universe and stop this now. Take care of yourselves. I'm gonna have a good day, whatever, however that needs to be. I'm gonna take care of myself. Invest in myself. Our best days are ahead. Take care, everyone.